Hello and welcome to Firstpost Vantage with me, Saroya. Let's get started. We are eagerly awaiting their arrival. Iran says it has been preparing for a U.S. ground invasion for decades. It claims American boots on Iranian soil will get a particularly warm welcome. And speaking of preparation, Iran's missiles are evolving. They may be firing fewer, but they're making sure more get through. And once again, Pakistan is out shopping in the Gulf, a begging bowl in one hand, a security pitch in the other. It's laughable, really. The terror exporter of the world trying to sell security. If there's one thing Pakistan never runs out of, it's confidence. And Andy Burnham has moved into number 10, and waiting to greet him on the other side of the door was a long list of chores. I'll tell you about it. Also on the show, the United States wants Canada to pay not for tariffs or trade, but for smoke. As Canadian wildfires rage, American cities are choking. Now you'd think it's a dispute where the wind gets the final say, but under Mr. President, absolutely not. And what exactly is Chinese Dreamcore, the Gen Z trend built on nostalgia for a past they never lived and anxiety about a future they're no longer sure they'll have? All this and more lined up, but first, the headlines. The Philippines military accuses the Chinese Coast Guard of clubbing a Filipino sailor with a baton, and the incident took place in the disputed South China Sea. This comes as the two countries' top diplomats prepare to meet at a regional summit in Manila this week. Yemen's Houthis announce a maritime embargo of Saudi Arabia. The Iran-backed group says it's a tit-for-tat response. This raises the stakes after Riyadh and the Houthis traded fire last week. It was for the first time in years. Previously, the Houthis had attacked shipping in the Gulf of Aden and Red Sea. The United States claims Cuba has infiltrated the highest levels of government in Washington. That's what a U.S. State Department report alleges. This comes amid Donald Trump's campaign to end the island communist rule. And Trump has repeatedly signaled that the Cuban government could be the next to fall after Venezuela. The Indian Army launches Operation Jal Rahat to help the Assam government in flood rescue operations. Incessant rain and worsening floods have inundated several parts of eastern Assam. Thousands have been affected. Several rivers in the state are also flowing above the danger level. And in Spain, more than 1,000 people flee. A major new wildfire raging north of Madrid. The fire started last Thursday in a mountainous area. The authorities have ordered the evacuation of nearby villages. Earlier this month, Spain suffered one of the deadliest wildfires in recent history. The United States has bombed Iran for the 9th consecutive day. We have 9 nights, 9 rounds of airstrikes, and one question. What exactly is the end game? The latest American strikes targeted Iranian military command centers, air defense and coastal surveillance sites, maritime capabilities, and missile and drone launch sites to further diminish Iran's ability to attack commercial vessels as well as civilian mariners transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Now, according to Tehran, America's latest strikes also crossed a red line. One of the strikes hit the under-construction Darkovin nuclear power plant. It is located in the Khuzestan province of southwestern Iran. Iran called it an attack on civilian infrastructure, a violation of international law. The International Atomic Energy Agency says there was no nuclear material at the site. The U.S. strikes also hit several locations in Iran's southern port city of Bushehr, home to the country's only civilian nuclear plant. Tehran's response came quickly. And as we have been seeing since the war started, the Gulf states came under fire. Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, all were hit with drones and missiles. The U.S. Embassy in Bahrain's capital warned Americans to stay alert. At the same time, American casualties are mounting. A third U.S. service member has died in Iraq. The Trump administration also identified 2 soldiers who were killed in Jordan while defending against Iranian missiles.
We control the Strait. They don't control anything. So we'll see what happens. But we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably 3. It's probably 3 as opposed to 2 great patriots.
Now, as the conflict turns deadly again for the U.S. military, with as many as 17 dead so far, where Trump will take the fight now is not clear. Reports are circulating about a possible ground invasion of Iran. But a senior Iranian official has now claimed that Tehran has been preparing and, in fact, even welcoming a U.S. ground invasion. The official also boasted that Tehran had just launched a new missile while decentralizing and burying its arsenal deep underground to withstand sustained American air campaigns. And apparently, Tehran has a game plan. If this happens, what is it? A possible ground invasion of Kuwait. A prominent Iranian academic recently identified Kuwait as one of Tehran's principal options for a ground incursion. The plan also reportedly includes physical seizure of 2 American military installations on Kuwaiti soil and even taking American troops hostage. He specifically identified Catering and Arifjan or Ali Al Salam Air Base as potential targets. If such a plan were ever carried out, it would transform Kuwait from a U.S. partner hosting military forces into the front line of a much wider regional conflict, of course, dramatically raising the stakes across the Persian Gulf. The proposal also invokes memories of the 1979 U.S. Embassy hostage crisis in Tehran. It began when radical Iranian students held 52 Americans captive for 444 days to demand the return of the exiled Shah for trial. Analysts suggest that the seizure of American personnel could be viewed as a means of exerting political pressure rather than simply achieving a military objective. And the rhetoric coming out of Iran has grown even more confrontational. As military action escalates, Tehran has also turned into symbolic warfare, displaying Donald Trump in a coffin. One of the most striking developments has been the silence of the mediators, Pakistan and Qatar, both of which helped broker the June talks between both sides in Switzerland. They've largely disappeared from public view. According to Iranian media, the last known visit by a Qatari delegation to Tehran was on the 10th of July. Yet, the diplomatic channels may not be completely closed.
Proposals have been put forward by mediators, they have been conveyed to us, and we have received them. But for now, allow me not to go into the details. What I can confirm is that, in recent days, the diplomatic apparatus has remained active and that ideas have indeed been conveyed to us by several mediators.
As more American troops are killed and the war spirals back towards full-scale conflict, one question refuses to go away. What exactly is Donald Trump's endgame? 21 weeks into this war, the answer remains as elusive as ever. From the very beginning, the administration has had a hard time trying to explain what victory will actually look like. Now Washington appears to be replaying the same strategy, only with higher stakes and a higher price tag. The immediate trigger is clear. Iran's grip over the Strait of Hormuz has become an economic and political nightmare for the White House. Rising shipping costs, nervous energy markets, and the threat of another oil shock. These are exactly the kind of headlines President Trump does not want. Oil prices are nearing $90 a barrel. But what remains unclear is why repeating the same military approach is expected to somehow produce a different outcome. Trump once again argued that he agreed to a ceasefire because he had no interest in becoming the next Herbert Hoover. The president forever associated with the economic collapse of 1929, the Great Depression. Yet with oil markets on edge, shipping lanes under pressure and military operations expanding once again, the White House risks discovering that history actually has a habit of ignoring campaign slogans. You can't tariff your way out of a history book. And the global economy certainly does not run on Truth Social posts. So here's Trump's dilemma. If he stops bombing, Iran claims victory. If he keeps bombing, the war expands. If he launches a ground invasion, he walks straight into the scenario Tehran says it has spent decades preparing for. If he doesn't, Iran retains its ability to threaten the Strait. For Trump, there are no good options, only bad and less bad options. And perhaps that's the real reason behind Trump's latest strategy. Escalate now, figure out the exit later. Mr. President, after warning America about forever wars, now faces the ultimate political irony, trying to escape the very trap he promised to avoid. Staying with the war in West Asia, Iran's missiles are changing. They're not getting bigger, nor are they traveling any longer. Instead, Iran's missiles are getting smarter. The war is in its 5th month and the Pentagon has noticed something unusual. Iran is launching fewer missiles, but they have become harder to intercept. Some are maneuvering more aggressively, changing their flight path at least twice before impact. Some missiles are striking with greater precision. Others are working alongside drones to confuse American air defense systems. US officials say the warfare is evolving faster than expected. So what exactly has Iran changed? The first change is the strategy. In the opening weeks of the war, Iran's strategy relied on volume. Tehran fired hundreds of missiles and drones to overwhelm US air defense systems. And that has worked. As per reports, US bases in the Gulf are running low on interceptor missiles. The supply is unable to meet the demand. And now Iran has changed its tactics. Fewer missiles are being fired, but they are more advanced. They can make split-second maneuvers, juking the incoming interceptor missiles. The result? Direct hits on US military infrastructure. So how are the missiles evading interception? Because of something known as MARV, that stands for Maneuverable Re-Entry Vehicle. A MARV is a ballistic missile warhead. It changes trajectory and shifts its flight path in its final stage, just before the main impact. This particular unpredictable move makes interception extremely difficult. That is why US air defense systems are struggling. And Iran is increasingly making these warheads in its underground missile cities. The IRGC has upgraded 2 of its main missiles. They carry these particular warheads now. The most lethal is called the Fatah-1. This missile has movable nozzles, fins attached to the missile booster that help in changing direction. And then there is the Khyber-Sheikhan. It has special fins on the warhead. They help make the missile lateral shifts during descent. So Iran is firing missiles that can trick air defense systems. And that's only half the story. US intel says Tehran is getting support from allies. The Pentagon claims Russia and China are indirectly involved. As per reports, Moscow and Beijing are providing satellite imagery and crucial intel about US troop movements. This has helped Iran hit American targets with precision. Over the weekend, Iranian missiles struck Muwafaq and Aqaba air bases in Jordan, killing at least 2 US troops. Iran also struck an ammunition depot in Kuwait's Camp Odeiri, along with a radar system in Ali Al Salam Air Base. The United States has also accepted damage to its bases in Qatar and Bahrain. 2 Iranian missiles in particular are responsible for this: the Imad and the Ghadar. These missiles have advanced nose cones. They can be guided using satellite-based coordinates that Russia and China are giving to the IRGC. So Iran's missiles are now doing 2 things. First, they are flying on more complex flight paths, making interception extremely difficult. Second, they are hitting with precision, thanks to inputs from Russia and China. That brings us to the latest US intel reports. They say Iranian missiles are improving. They are getting unpredictable, precise and deadlier. On the other hand, President Donald Trump claims Iran's missiles are of no big concern.
They've lost everything almost militarily. They've got very little left. They've got some missiles. They've got some drones. They've got some manufacturing ability, not much.
Clearly, Iran seems to have learned something. Missiles don't need to be the fastest, nor do they have to be the biggest. They just have to be annoying enough to ruin American ambitions. Our next story is about Pakistan. The cash-strapped country is shopping for Gulf deals, and its latest offer is its own military. Welcome to Pakistan's new boots for barrels strategy in the Gulf. As per reports, Islamabad is negotiating an expanded defense pact with Kuwait. In return, Pakistan is hoping it gets energy cooperation and some desperately needed cash. Turns out, exporting terror isn't a sustainable business model after all. And so now, the terror exporter of the world is trying to sell the only other thing it has in abundance: troops, jets, drones. The only things that still run and thrive in the country, while millions of Pakistanis struggle for basic necessities. Quick question though, doesn't Pakistan already have a similar defense pact with Saudi Arabia to defend if attacked? Won't a similar pact with Kuwait further tie Islamabad to the issues in the Gulf? Or is Pakistan deliberately trying to increase the chances of being pulled into a wider war? Because if that's the price of keeping its economy afloat, then is Islamabad ready to fight someone else's war just to pay its own bills? Here's what we have learned. The talks remain at an early stage and could still be complicated by heightened tensions between the United States and Iran. Last week, there were reportedly growing concerns in Islamabad that Pakistan's defense pact with Saudi Arabia could drag the country straight into the US-Iran war. Those concerns grew even more after Iran-aligned Houthis attacked Saudi Arabia. Pakistan had responded by warning its neighbor Iran that any attack on Saudi Arabia would be treated as an attack on Pakistan itself. And now Islamabad is discussing, as we mentioned earlier, a similar defense pact with Kuwait. Remember, any defense deal with Kuwait, which has itself come under heavy attacks from Iran this year, would also raise questions about Pakistan's role in future mediation between the United States and Iran. Kuwait has had a more limited defense deal with Pakistan for training and joint exercises since 2023. It is now seeking a show of force by Islamabad that would be similar to Pakistan's pact with Saudi Arabia. According to Pakistani government officials, this could mean the inclusion of thousands of Pakistani troops on ground, fighter jets, drones, an air defense system, and other defense-related facilities. Now, whether Pakistan is prepared to go that far, that remains unclear. After all, its defense pact with Saudi was built on decades of strategic ties. Kuwait is very different. But if Kuwait's wish list really is everything, then the question is Pakistan prepared to send its soldiers into a region already on the brink of a wider war? Let's not forget, there's one small problem with Pakistan's strategy, that is contradiction. For years, Pakistan has tried to balance its relations with both the Gulf states and Iran. But you cannot be everyone's friend while promising to defend one side against the other. Can Islamabad still present itself as a credible mediator between the United States and Iran if it is stationing troops to protect Iran's rivals? But then again, this is Pakistan that we're talking about. It may be broke, but it still thinks it can punch above its weight. For now, there is no confirmed defense pact. Even reports of these said discussions say it is still unclear whether these talks will evolve into a full-fledged military agreement. But the direction must not be ignored. As United States and Iran trade strikes, Gulf states caught in the crossfire are increasingly looking for security partners beyond America. And Pakistan, eager to stay relevant despite being a non-starter, wants to step in and offer things it cannot afford to give, even if it means sacrificing its own people's future. One just needs to step back and ask, can a country that cannot fix its own economy really afford new military commitments abroad? Now let's look at the Russia-Ukraine war. Last night, Moscow launched one of its largest aerial assaults of the year. More than 160 projectiles rained down on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. Among them were the Iskander and Zircon missiles, two of Russia's most sophisticated weapons. They travel at hypersonic speeds. That's more than 5 times the speed of sound. These missiles can evade any modern air defense system. Even the US made Patriot and THAAD. Over the weekend, Russia fired these missiles in a span of a few hours. Clearly, this wasn't just another attack. It was a statement from Russian President Vladimir Putin. This war is not winding down. It is evolving and perhaps escalating. Our next report tells you more.
For most people, the weekend is a time to switch off. For Ukraine, the weekend was a complete opposite. The sky lit up with missile and drone interceptions. Russia had unleashed a massive aerial raid on Sunday, one of the biggest attacks this year. More than 160 projectiles were fired at Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. A few were intercepted, while many hit buildings and power plants. At least one civilian was killed and many were left wounded. But what stood out in the attack wasn't just the sheer size, but the kind of missiles that were used. Let's begin with the missile that led the attack, the Iskander. This is a highly precise tactical ballistic missile. It's known for its speed and evasion capabilities. It alters its course mid-flight while releasing decoy flares to confuse interceptor missiles and radars. When the missile reaches its final stages, it dives towards the target at speeds greater than Mach 5, meaning the Iskander goes hypersonic. At those speeds, it's almost impossible to intercept. It's known for its launch readiness. It takes just 4 minutes to initiate, set up, and fire. But the Iskander wasn't the only lethal weapon launched by Russia. After the first wave of attacks, Moscow fired multiple hypersonic cruise missiles. We're talking about the Zircon. This missile was originally designed as an anti-ship weapon. Now it's increasingly being used against land targets. Unlike the Iskander, which climbs high before diving to get to hypersonic speeds, the Zircon flies directly at speeds of Mach 9. That's over 9,000 kilometers per hour. It has fins on the body and warhead, allowing it to shift its path at hypersonic speeds. Because of the sheer velocity and its unpredictable trajectory, the Zircon is hard to intercept. It gives air defense systems only a few seconds of reaction time, but that's only if the launch is detected. After that, the missile becomes impossible to track. And Russia knows this. That's why it has adopted a new strategy in Ukraine. The first wave of attacks includes drones and short-range missiles, like the Iskander. These draw out the Ukrainian air defense systems, leaving the capital city exposed, and then the Zircon beams in for the strike. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is now heavily relying on such tactics.
Today was one of the largest attacks carried out with ballistic missiles. Kyiv and the surrounding region were the Russians' primary target. They had been preparing this attack for several days, stockpiling missiles. Of course, the danger remains even now, and this must be taken into account. Russia is placing its bets on ballistic missiles, and it is because of them that Putin still believes in his war.
But Ukraine is fighting back. After the Russian attacks over the weekend, Kyiv launched retaliatory strikes. Several Ukrainian drones struck Moscow on Monday morning. This was after Ukrainian drone boats damaged Russian oil tankers in the Black Sea on Sunday. This is the uncomfortable reality. This war isn't just dragging on, it's becoming more lethal. The missiles are becoming faster, the drones are becoming cheaper and more effective. The battlefield is becoming more complex, and while technology is advancing, humanity is paying the price.
A new Prime Minister, a new government, and another promise of a fresh start. That is the story from the United Kingdom today. The country has a new leader. His name is Andy Burnham. Earlier today, he met King Charles at the Buckingham Palace. That is the official residence of the UK's head of state. And there he was asked to form the next British government. Burnham is the 7th person to hold office in just 10 years. That's a remarkable statistic for a country that touts itself as one of the world's oldest democracies. It also tells the story of a country that has struggled to find political stability. Over the past decade, Britain has been hit by one crisis after another. From exiting the European Union to the COVID-19 pandemic, cost of living crisis, each has tested the government of the day. And the result has been a revolving door of prime ministers. Now, it's Andy Burnham's turn to lead. He inherits an economy that has struggled to gain momentum. Public finances are under pressure. An immigration debate that continues to divide the country. And a world made more uncertain by wars in Ukraine and West Asia. So can he succeed where 6 others have struggled? Tonight we're going to take a look at that. Let's start with how Britain arrived at this moment. Until this afternoon, the United Kingdom had a different Prime Minister. His name is Keir Starmer. He led the Labour Party. This is one of Britain's 2 major political parties. In 2024, Starmer led Labour to a landslide victory that ended 14 years of the Conservative Party's rule. It was a result that many believed would mark a new beginning. But governing proved far more difficult than winning an election. As you know, economic growth remained weak. Many families continued to feel the impact of high living costs. Besides, a row over welfare reforms also exposed divisions inside Starmer's party. A series of political controversies also hurt this government, and soon support for the government began to fall. So as pressure mounted, Keir Starmer announced his resignation and paved the way for new leadership.
I'm about to visit His Majesty the King to offer my resignation and close the book on my time as Prime Minister. My work is done. In 6.5 years, I took our party from a historic defeat in 2019, changed it so it was fit to face the country, and won a landslide general election victory in 2024. Since then, it has been the privilege of my life to serve you and this great country as Prime Minister.
Now, to replace Starmer, Labour turned to a politician who spent decades in public life, Andy Burnham. He has served in several cabinet roles, but in recent years, Burnham has been best known as the Mayor of Greater Manchester. This is one of England's largest city regions. He built a reputation for speaking up for communities outside London and for challenging decisions made by successive governments in the country. That made him one of Labour's most trusted figures. Last week, the party elected him as its new leader. And today, he formally became Britain's new Prime Minister.
Britain needs to show the world that we can regain our stability once again. And that is our challenge, to make politics work, to make it work better. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better.
But the warm words end there. This is because the challenges ahead are formidable. The first is the economy. For many people, the question is simple. Will life become more affordable? After years of slow growth, many British families are still feeling the impact of high living costs. Businesses want more investment, workers want better paying jobs, and consumers want their money to go further. Burnham has promised to revive the economy, but promises are one thing, delivering results in a struggling economy, that's another. That brings us to the second challenge. Britain's public finances. The government faces growing demands to spend more on the National Health Service, on housing, on transport, and on modernising the country's infrastructure. At the same time, it cannot allow borrowing to keep rising indefinitely. The UK's national debt remains high. That leaves Burnham with some difficult decisions. Either raise taxes or cut spending or borrow more. None of those options come without a political cost. The third challenge then is immigration. It has become one of Britain's biggest political issues in recent years. Voters want stronger border controls. At the same time, many businesses depend on migrant workers. Burnham has promised a fairer and tighter immigration system, but many prime ministers before him have made the same promise. And few manage to satisfy voters. And while he deals with those challenges at home, he must also navigate a rapidly changing world. The war in Ukraine continues. Conflict in West Asia remains a source of global instability, and Europe is under pressure to take greater responsibility for its own security as a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Britain is expected to play a major role. That means higher defense spending. For a government already under financial pressure, that is a serious problem. Which brings us to the final test, and that is US President Donald Trump. The relationship between London and Washington will depend on how Burnham handles a president known for his unpredictable style. You see, Keir Starmer learnt the hard way that Trump initially spoke positively about the former Prime Minister, but their relationship soon turned sour, partly after Starmer refused to support the US strikes on Iran. For the record, Burnham has also criticized Trump in the past, but he says he will deal with the US president respectfully while also being prepared to disagree when necessary. How that relationship evolves could shape trade, it could shape security, and the UK's role on the world stage. So that is the task before Andy Burnham. And it is an ambitious agenda, one that has defeated more than one prime minister before him. And perhaps that is the biggest question of all. Can the man who became Britain's 7th prime minister in just 10 years succeed where so many have failed? Or will Britain soon find itself searching for yet another prime minister? US President Donald Trump has been troubled lately. After all, there are 1,000 things he has to worry about. Wars, World Cups, winning elections, all occupy his mind. But now, he can't even catch a breather. He can't even go out to smell the roses in the White House rose garden anymore. Because a giant wave of polluted air has covered Washington, D.C. And it isn't just Washington. Large parts of the United States are covered in toxic smog, in smoke coming in from Canada. Like every year, Canadian forests are on fire. It's wildfire season in the country. But this year, Trump has had enough. He is demanding compensation for the pollution. Here's our report.
As seems to be the norm these days, it started with a social media rant. US President Donald Trump put up this post. Once again, he claimed that the US is being invaded, but this time by filthy, polluted and unhealthy air. And the air has been filthy over the past week. This was Washington, D.C. Look at that smog. It almost looks like Lahore in the winter. New York seems to be mimicking New Delhi. In fact, it briefly went above and beyond. On the pollution scale, that is. For 3 days last week, New York had worse air quality than New Delhi. That's not an easy feat. So, how did things get so bad? Well, the US had some help from its northern neighbor. It's wildfire season in Canada. Canada's beautiful boreal forests are ablaze again. The pine and probably maple trees can't take the summer sun, so they're catching fire. And the smoke from these flames is making its way to America. That's what's causing the air in the US to turn filthy. Canada's Prime Minister was in New Jersey on Sunday. His country co-hosted the FIFA World Cup, so he was there to watch the final. And apparently, Trump caught hold of Carney and gave him a talking to.
Well, it went good, but I told him, you got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air. Our air's been poisoned. I have a good relationship with Mark Carney, but, we got to stop the fires up there. If we can help them, we'll help them. But maybe they should pay us some damages or something, or we should do some tariffs. But it was terrible.
Trump wants compensation for all the polluted air coming in from Canada, and he's thinking about imposing new tariffs on Canadian goods to get that money. As usual, this has angered some Canadians, because tariffs are a touchy subject there. But that's not the only reason the Canadians are upset. Trump has also accused Canada of willful negligence and of not properly maintaining their forests. The province of Ontario is presently facing almost 200 active wildfires. The Premier of the province wasn't thrilled with Trump's comments.
But isn't it, I find it a shame, the administration in the U.S. and Congress people writing these letters and blaming us and so on and so forth. And we Canadians love Americans, but to make the comments they did through the administration, unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. We're trying to get through this. And maybe, I got an idea. For President Trump. Why don't you get rid of the softwood lumber tariffs? Because 33% of the lumber that you use in your building, guess what? It comes from Canada. You want us to clear the forest? Well, open up the gates. Let's start shipping softwood lumber down there. And that would resolve a lot of the issues that we face right now.
Overall, Canada is facing almost 1,000 wildfires right now. They have burned around 28,500 square kilometers. While these numbers sound quite high, this is actually below the 5-year average. However, the situation is still quite dire. And now, as the Canadian government tries to deal with the wildfire problem, it's facing additional heat from Trump.
Every technological revolution comes with a promise. The steam engine promised speed. The internet promised connectivity. Artificial intelligence promised efficiency. But somewhere along the way, efficiency started replacing empathy. Today, an employee can spend years building a career only to lose it because an algorithm decided their productivity score wasn't high enough. This is about Meta. This year, the Mark Zuckerberg-led tech giant announced around 8,000 job cuts, nearly 10% of its workforce. Now the question is, who chose those names? According to a lawsuit filed by 26 Meta employees in California, the company relied on internal AI-powered systems while selecting employees for layoffs earlier this year. The lawsuit paints a disturbing picture. It claims Meta did not simply look at employee performance. It looked at digital footprints, internal AI dashboards, productivity scores, communication patterns, even something called large language model token usage. Apparently, how much employees interacted with AI tools also became part of the evaluation. Now think about that. Your value to the company could depend on how often you spoke to another machine. It's almost poetic. Humans training AI and AI deciding which humans stay employed. Talk about the student grading the teacher. The lawsuit goes even further. It alleges Meta used internal tools with names like MetaMate and so-called Second Brain, a system that tracked documents, messages, emails, work patterns. Alongside that came productivity scores, generated from keystrokes, browser history, screen activity, digital behavior. And here's where things become deeply troubling, because life doesn't always fit into spreadsheets. Imagine an employee on maternity leave or someone recovering from surgery. Naturally, they would send fewer emails, write less code, attend fewer meetings, produce fewer keystrokes. Not because they're lazy, because they're human. Yet, according to the lawsuit, the AI allegedly failed to distinguish protected leave from poor engagement. The result? Employees who had taken maternity leave, medical leave, disability accommodations, or parental leave were allegedly far more likely to appear less productive. And as we mentioned earlier, not because they performed poorly, because they weren't sitting behind a keyboard. It's a classic case of confusing presence with competence. Meta strongly rejects these allegations. The company says the claims lack merit. It insists workforce decisions were made by people, not AI. A federal judge has also allowed the layoffs to continue while the legal battle plays out. So as of now, nothing has been proven. These remain allegations, but the bigger debate has already begun. Because this isn't only about Meta, it's about the direction the modern workplace is heading in. Artificial intelligence has one enormous advantage: scale. It can evaluate thousands of employees in minutes. No coffee breaks, no fatigue, no office gossip. Sounds efficient. But then you have to realize something important. Efficiency is not the same as fairness. An algorithm is only as good as the data feeding it. If the data misunderstands maternity leave, then AI misunderstands maternity leave. If the data mistakes medical recovery for low productivity, the AI faithfully repeats that mistake. People often say, the computer can't be biased. Actually, the computer is extremely obedient. It simply inherits our biases, and that too at lightning speed. And here's the most dangerous part. Algorithms create an illusion of certainty. A human manager can explain why they made a decision. An employee can ask questions, challenge assumptions. But what happens when the answer becomes, the system flagged you? Which system? Why? Based on what? No clear explanation, no accountability, just a score. And when livelihoods depend on invisible formulas, transparency isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Now, this controversy arrives at a crucial moment. Across the world, AI is moving beyond writing essays and generating images. It's entering HR departments, recruitment, performance reviews, promotion, salary decisions, and now layoffs. We are slowly outsourcing judgment itself. And here's the irony. The technology industry loves one phrase: human-centered AI. Perhaps it's time to ask, where exactly are the humans? Because AI should help managers make better decisions, not become the manager. Artificial intelligence should never eliminate accountability, because behind every productivity graph is a person. Behind every dashboard is a family. Behind every layoff, a life. The real question isn't whether artificial intelligence can decide who deserves a job. It's whether society is ready to let an algorithm become the judge, the jury, and effectively the executioner of someone's career. This year's FIFA World Cup is over. Spain have won their second World Cup. They beat Argentina to lift the trophy. And the victory was well deserved. Argentina couldn't manage a shot for the entire 90 minutes of regular time. So, the better team won. It happens. It just wasn't Argentina's day. But instead of gracefully accepting the completely fair result, some of the Argentine players had another idea. They decided to start a brawl after the game ended, leading to one of the most disgraceful scenes witnessed at a World Cup. Here are all the details.
Heartbreak is common after cup finals, especially when it's the FIFA World Cup, the most prestigious football tournament. Every 4 years, you see scenes like this. Players from the losing team looking heartbroken, even crying because they came so close to football's most coveted prize, only to see it slip from their grasp. Even Lionel Messi, who's won everything in the sport, including the World Cup trophy at the last tournament, even Messi's heart broke after the loss. It's sad, but it happens all the time. What doesn't happen is this. Argentina's Leandro Paredes started a brawl. He began by fighting Spanish defender Eric Garcia. And then he moved on to throwing Spain's Gavi on the ground. There was also another scuffle involving Argentina's Nahuel Molina and Spain's captain Rodri. It was an ugly, violent end to the World Cup, completely unbecoming of the greatest football tournament in the world. There have been consequences, of course. Paredes received a red card for his attack. This was after the match had already ended, but the referee rightfully decided that his behavior warranted disciplinary action. And it doesn't end there. The whole Argentina squad may face disciplinary action for the brawl. FIFA is still investigating the incident, but the usual punishment is a 3-match ban. However, it might not stop at that. There are precedents for more stringent action, and these have also taken place at World Cups. The most infamous example is that of former Uruguay striker Luis Suarez. He bit Italy's Giorgio Chiellini during the group stages of the 2014 World Cup. Suarez was handed a 9-match international ban and a 4-month football ban overall. These aren't the only incidents of violence at the World Cup. Perhaps the most memorable was the headbutt by Zinedine Zidane. He attacked Italy's Marco Materazzi during the 2006 World Cup final. This was after the Italian provoked the French legend. Zidane was sent off. Both men faced bans for their actions. Zidane never served his 3-match ban because he retired from football. But there was a clear difference between the earlier incidents of violence and the latest one by the Argentine players. Argentina had already lost. The match had ended. Spain won. The violence wasn't about using the dark arts to get ahead, like in the case of Suarez. It wasn't exactly a moment of madness, as in the case of Zidane. The actions of Paredes and Molina were the actions of sore losers, of bitter players who lashed out. The match wasn't really a close one. Spain dominated throughout. They had 68% of the possession. They took 20 shots compared to Argentina's 3, and those 3 shots came during extra time, and none of them were on target. Only the heroics of the Argentine keeper kept the scores level at the end of regular time. The final was a one-sided affair. The only way Argentina could have won was a moment of magic. They did have a magician with them, but Messi was contained throughout the game. So there was no reason for Argentina to have any complaints about how the match turned out, and especially no reason for them to start attacking the clearly better side. By acting like sore losers, the Argentine players set the worst possible example for young people watching the match. Perhaps that's the biggest shame, because it's the exact opposite of what a World Cup finalist is supposed to do.
China's Gen Z are nostalgic for a lost past, the spectre of a vanished, increasingly modernized childhood, and the future they may not have. Add to that surreal imagery, dream logic, and the sense of alienation that many young people feel, and you've got the Chinese Dreamcore. What is Chinese Dreamcore? It's not an aesthetic, it is fast becoming a lifestyle. Missing the past, old music, old TV shows, childhood memories, that's usually how nostalgia works. But the Chinese Dreamcore, it has spun that further. Millions of young people are making and watching videos filled with grainy footage of early 2000s apartment complexes, school classrooms, Windows XP startup sounds, old shopping malls, family dinners. These videos aren't mourning a lost childhood. They're mourning a lost future. And that is what makes it so fascinating. Not just for China and its youth, but for every country where Gen Z is beginning to question whether they live better than their parents. Now, to understand why Chinese Dreamcore exists, you first have to understand the promise that shaped modern China. For decades, China experienced one of the fastest economic transformations in human history. Hundreds of millions of people escaped poverty. Cities expanded at breathtaking speed. Every generation expected to be wealthier than the one before it. That expectation, in fact, became so normal that it stopped feeling like optimism. It started feeling like the blueprint. Study hard, work hard, buy an apartment, and life will keep improving. This wasn't just government messaging for millions of families, it was a lived experience. If your parents bought property in the early 2000s, its value often multiplied. If they entered the workforce during the boom years, promotions and higher wages weren't unusual. Progress wasn't guaranteed, but it felt increasingly likely. And then came Gen Z. China's Gen Z is the most educated generation in the country's history. They've grown up with high-speed rail, mobile payments, AI-powered services, and cities that many Western countries still struggle to match. On paper, they inherited a richer China. Emotionally, however, many feel they've inherited a slower one. Economic growth is moderated, the property market has lost much of its unstoppable momentum, graduate competition has intensified, and stable white-collar jobs no longer carry the certainty they once did. For the first time in decades, many young Chinese aren't convinced that tomorrow will automatically be better than today. And that applies to Gen Z all across the globe, doesn't it? And that's exactly where Dreamcore comes in. Watch enough of these videos and posts and you will notice they're obsessed with ordinary life, not luxury, not wealth, not even major historical events. Instead, you see parents cooking dinner in a modest apartment, school corridors flooded with afternoon sunlight, internet cafes, old televisions, family road trips captured on cheap camcorders. Now, all of these aren't symbols of material prosperity. They're symbols of confidence, the confidence that life was moving. It was moving somewhere. As we mentioned earlier, the story isn't uniquely Chinese. Across much of the developed world, Gen Z is experiencing a similar emotional contradiction. They are the most digitally connected generation in history, yet they report record levels of loneliness. They have access to more information than any previous generation, yet many feel less certain about their future. They've inherited remarkable technology, but in many countries, housing has become less affordable. Careers are less predictable, and upward mobility less certain. Whether it's American liminal space edits, Japan's fascination with its bubble-era aesthetic, South Korea's nostalgia for optimism of the 1990s, or China's Dreamcore, the underlying emotion is the same. Different countries, different economies, it's the same question. What if progress is no longer something people assume? And maybe that's why Dreamcore resonates so deeply as well. It's easy to dismiss it as another TikTok trend or Instagram aesthetic with VHS filters and nostalgic music. Beneath it lies something much more consequential. For decades, China wasn't just selling products to the world, it was selling the idea of progress too. Dreamcore reflects that that's no longer enough. And when a generation loses certainty about the future, it often starts searching the past. Not because the past was objectively better, but because it remembers a time when tomorrow still felt predictable. That's why Chinese Dreamcore isn't really about old computers, old apartment buildings or songs. It's about the end of an economic emotion. The feeling that history was moving in your direction. And perhaps that's why this trend has found an audience far beyond China too. Google will tell you Chinese Dreamcore is a digital nostalgia subculture. We say it reflects the economic mood. We reckon the most important political and economic indicators aren't always found on reports and data charts. They may be found in what people dream about and what they long for. Argentina lost the World Cup final. Within minutes, social media turned heartbreak into entertainment. Because online, there are only two results. You either lift the trophy or you lift the meme economy. On the internet, there are only punchlines. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell a story. In Madrid, Spanish fans celebrated through the night and into Monday morning after their team defeated Argentina to lift the FIFA World Cup. In China, the robot race is accelerating. Beijing says Chinese companies have now developed more than 400 humanoid robots, accounting for more than half of the world's total. And meet the internet's newest celebrity, Jimothy, an unusually round raccoon from Seattle who's stealing hearts and going viral on social media. Also, finally taking you back in history, on this day in 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human being to set foot on the moon, stepping off the lunar module Eagle. He told a billion people listening at home, that's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. That's all from us. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow.